Welcome everyone to Flyover Fallout, a look at the latest match for St. Louis City. In this case, Matchweek 2, a 2-0 loss to San Diego FC. I'm Matt Baker, your host, joined as always for Fallout by Santiago Beltran. Santi, welcome in to the stream.
Thanks, Matt. I'm not very excited about talking about a loss, but we're here. We have to do it after every game.
Obligation, not only to everyone who spends their time and allows us to enter their lives via City, but I think for our own benefit. I don't like doing matches like this where there's so little offense, there's so many issues that become prevalent. It's a reminder in so many different ways about how far City has to go to really catch up to a team like San Diego, who just entered the league last year, which is one of the most frustrating pieces of all of this. But at the same time, we haven't hit a rebuild button, but we've basically hit a reset button on City. And this was a pretty big gut check into that whole where we are in that process.
For sure, especially against a team like San Diego, who did well last year and is doing well this year, advanced in the CONCACAF Champions Cup and won previous week and won again last night. It's showing that year two, you can continue being better. So yeah, that's a little bit frustrating.
Well, let's get right into the pod recording. We've got a lunchtime fallout on this after the latest Sunday match that I think we're going to have, if I saw the schedule correctly. So if you stayed up to finish it, if you stayed up to pay attention to the press conference, grab another cup of coffee as you start this Monday afternoon. Let's get going with the pod recording. Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker, joined as always by my friend in soccer, Santiago Beltran, for another edition of Flyover Fallout. Unfortunately, this week we look at a 2-0 loss to the San Diego FC by our beloved St. Louis City SC. Santi, welcome into the show. And we might not have a ton of positives to talk about, but there are definitely takeaways. There are some bright spots here and there throughout. There are things that you could see that eventually we hope to see, perform better, that come to fruition. But man, there was just a lot to take away from this one on the not so enjoyable side.
Yeah, I had some hopes before the game based on what the team showed last week, but that didn't materialize. It was a rough start and things got better, but the team couldn't score, and then there wasn't a lot of offense created, and San Diego imposed their style and was the better team for most of the night.
I want to preface this entire episode by not tooting our horn here, but saying if you don't listen to our Thursday shows, if you're tuning into this, you don't listen to our preview shows, I feel we got a lot of this right in what we were expecting, Santi. Not a lot surprised me on the San Diego side. They did exactly what we were expecting in their desire to possess, their dictation of pace. The ball was played through Anders Dreyer by and large. We'll look at the stats. We'll look at the passing maps and stuff here in a second, but it all is no surprises to me on how this one played out. The only surprise is how ineffective St. Louis was in certain areas, certain phases of play. I was expecting a little bit more, and I wasn't expecting as much of a drastic change to the positioning and the structure of City as we ended up seeing. But let's take it back to the beginning before we get into all that. Let's look at the starting 11, because this starting 11 helps explain, I think, a lot of the issues that St. Louis had throughout, whether it's in the midfield, in the advanced areas, on the wings, and connecting. This starting 11, we had 10 out of 11 correct from our prediction. And I think that's probably the case for most people who do projected starting 11s. 10 out of 11 was pretty positive for this, or pretty prevalent for this one. Roman Berkey in net. A back three of Dante Polvera, Timo Baumgartel, and Jaziel Orozco left to right. Rafael Santos left wing back. Conrad Vollum right wing back. Chris Durkin and Daniel Edelman are central midfielders. Miguel Perez and Sangbin Zhang as our attacking midfielders, and Simon Betcher was our striker. Obviously, the missing piece here is Marcel Hartl. And it took a few minutes after the graphic was released on Sunday night, but we got confirmation from the club that no injury, no issue. Marcel Hartl missed the match pending the birth of his second child. This is a happy occasion to have to miss a match. I saw various thoughts from the fan base on well, this was going to be a tough matchup anyway. And so if Hartle has to miss a match, it's almost like you just go all in on this. You kind of go all in on punting the match is what the idea is. And then you get Hartle for what you expect to be the closer matchups here upcoming. That's an interesting perspective. Ultimately, whenever you lose Marcel Hartle from the lineup, you're going to be lesser from a St. Louis City perspective. He is our MVP prediction by, I think, consensus almost. But as far as field players go, the most important player. I think you had Berkey as your MVP for this year. But as far as field players go, it does not get more important than Marcel Hartle. So that is the baseline for which you should be judging this game from a St. Louis perspective also, is knowing that we were without the absolute unequivocal most important field player for St. Louis City. The statistically, Santi, the unfortunate thing on this one is this would have been Marcel Hartle's 50th straight start and appearance in all competitions for St. Louis. He had played every single match since his debut back to Leagues Cup 2024. Cedric Teuchert came in that last match before the break against SKC. Hartle came in that first match for Leagues Cup 2024, and he's played and started every single match since. He still has not missed a match due to injury. So, I mean, while we congratulate, obviously, the Hartle family, hopefully, we haven't seen the announcement yet, but if everything goes well, we congratulate them on this joyous occasion. We have Miguel Perez then step into the starting 11. What do you make of that?
Well, obviously, not seeing Hartel on the starting 11 was a surprise. When I initially got the starting 11, I was like, oh, it's a repeat from last week. I was like, oh, wait a minute, Hartel is missing. And thanks for confirming he has played every game since his arrival. I knew last year he played every game.
Yep.
So I knew it had at least been a while. But I like that Miguel Perez got the opportunity. Obviously, not a position where we had seen him with the first team. He has played there with the second team, and I think he did okay. Not enough touches, but there were a couple of plays where he was impactful. He had that pass to Simon Betcher that I think all of us are sad about now that it didn't go in and it wasn't a good finish. But yeah, it was good to see a young player getting an opportunity. When I saw San Diego's lineup, and this is something I like to see when I see the opponent's lineup, they had 3 out of their 4 defenders were under 23 players, which is something that is valuable. It's great that the way they have built the team, they can give opportunities to youngsters, and it's something that we have not seen enough with City. So I welcome Miggy on the starting lineup because of that.
I couldn't agree more. It does raise interesting questions about Demay's rating system. Not that we're doubting it at this point yet, just 2 games in, but it's just noteworthy, right? Like Miguel Perez starts over Cedric Teuchert. Miguel Perez starts over Makai Joyner. As we found out in the post-game comments, it does seem like we have an answer on Cedric Teuchert. So getting that out right in the front, because a lot of people in the chat, including Fetlor Colton, Teuchert needs to start over Betcher. He came in and made a huge difference, is the comment. The question right now is Cedric Teuchert healthy enough, fit enough to start? Because he was not, by all accounts, in this match. You know, he spoke post-game talking about pushing himself, showing himself to the training staff, to the coaching staff, that he's ready to go. He's ready to be pushed. But Demay was very much of the mindset that he's being worked along. You got the 4-minute cameo, including stoppage time in week 1, 20, 21, 25 minutes or so in week 2 now. And Teuchert himself says, hopefully that next step is 45 and then 60 and then more. And so next week, I think Teuchert puts himself in contention to start. But at that point, will we see Demay shift into he's seen enough out of certain players that he wants a change of look, or is he going to stick with the consistency that he talked about pregame to San Diego? We'll talk about that one, and that'll be a huge piece of our preview to Seattle next week. But I do think that context helps you understand why Teuchert, who had a good showing at a cameo last week, didn't start this game, and they stuck with Song Bin, and why Miggy might have jumped him. Mekhi Joyner is the question to me. Is in that role in the attacking midfield, you have Miguel Perez, who, like you said, performed well. I think he had a pretty good match, all things considered. There wasn't anything noteworthy, and he had that one moment of brilliance in positioning and that pass to Betcher. But Mekhi Joyner, who had been playing the right attacking mid role, wasn't preferred in that left attacking mid versus Miguel Perez. Probably the biggest noteworthy thing to me in this entire 11 outside of Marcel Hartl.
For sure. But you mentioned the rating system for Dame, and maybe that has something to do with it. He praised Miguel Perez for the way he played in the preseason and the way he has grown in the last 6 weeks. So maybe in that rating system, he's over Mekhi Joyner. Maybe for a lot of people, Mekhi Joyner should be or Miguel Perez, but at least from the coaching staff standpoint, it looks like Perez is a step above.
And like you mentioned, San Diego had a lot of youth, a lot of younger players, super draft, Monadua, and just a host of consistency that they brought into this match. And so the San Diego team, who had beaten Pachuca, I think it was, for 4-0.
It was Pumas.
Sorry. Pumas 4-0, lost 1-0, but has been just demolishing opponents at home. They now have, I think, 11 goals in all competitions at home through 3 home matches to start the year, and 0 goals conceded. An insane stat for at home in the beginning of March for a team like San Diego. So that's the form that they're in. 3-word reviews are a post that our friend Stuart Holgren has been doing. He borrowed it from his fandom with Fulham, and he's been posting that online. So I wanted to list out some of the noteworthy and relevant 3-word reviews that folks have been talking about in the fan base for this match. Raise the ceiling, an Abo comment. We missed Hartl, absolutely, from Happy City fan. Sunday Night Scaries from Hellbender STL. Diego cost Klaus. There's Klaus had a brace this weekend. There are a lot of comparisons being made, and that is noteworthy. Klaus is having such a fantastic start to the season. He's on pace for 51 goals this year after having 3 and 2. So you just do the math. It's Groundhog's Day, kind of getting into the same old kind of a thing. And a lot of comments probably not suitable to read on the podcast. Santi, some good things, because I want to talk about the good before the bad. There were some good things to talk about. I will name the resiliency that we had in each half. So we did have bad starts to the half, but we came back and we at least created some moments of danger. One of those particular moments of danger came at 23 minutes with Simon Betcher. And this is a case where we didn't create much. 2 shots, no shots on goal in the first half. But the one opportunity that we had here was such a perfect opportunity to finish. It was well created. It was great movement between the lines. It involved Rafael Santos, Chris Durkin, Miguel Perez up into Simon Betcher, and it has to be finished. And for a team that still has yet to create a massive amount of quality chances, when these kinds of high quality chances come, you have to convert them. And that's why I can see the argument of, okay, it's just one chance. Like Betcher can't be presumed to complete every single pass that comes to him. Okay, but when so few do come and he's in such a perfect position, I think there's an expectation that as our starting number 9, he finishes. And when he doesn't, there are valid questions of, okay, we need to get a number 9 in who can finish these opportunities. And that goes at this point to the Klaus comparison that we just had, but also Sergio Cordova coming in and hopefully being able to make his presence known within the next week or two and see what he can offer as far as finishing goes. Besides that, those couple of dangerous moments, the resiliency after the really rough starts to each half, Cedric Toyshirt was a bright spot later on in the second half. That's a reason that people want to keep seeing more out of Cedric Toyshirt. He had good movement between the lines. He was willing to carry the ball. He showed his individual brilliance on the ball by beating 3 defenders. Talk about that play in a little bit. But I think the 2 other good comments from me are the speed from our midfield. So we had a lot of issues in the midfield as far as the spacing, the positioning, the congestion in some ways. But Edelman and Durkin covered a ton of ground, and they continue to be able to cover a lot of ground, especially if they're needing to help track back. I mean, Daniel Edelman had a clearance. The ball ended up being called offside, but Daniel Edelman had a clearance on a play where this was the beep test, true and true to a T, where he was able to track down a San Diego attacker who had a 1v1 against Berkey and clear that ball as it was maybe 6 feet from Roman Berkey. That's what Edelman can do with his speed. Both him and Durkin out there, that's good, especially with this bizarre kind of shape. And then the last thing that was noteworthy in the good way for me is I felt we did a good job in limiting San Diego's danger on goal when they were set up in possession. As San Diego was a very intentional team, very mindful in how they progress, they take their time. When we were requiring them to break through our lines in a compact defense, whether it's a mid block or if we drop back into a low block, they didn't do too much damage when they were able to set up. They did a lot of damage in transition. They definitely exposed our press. So that's one of the bad things we'll talk about. But as far as good things go, I do think we did a decent job of limiting them in their set offense. And that's noteworthy to me because the press is a different conversation we're going to have in just a minute. Anything else on the good side noteworthy that you found from this match?
Yeah, for me, you mentioned Roman Berkey was my MVP candidate. He had a great performance last night. If it had not been for him, could have been a 4-0, 5-0 game. But he had like 3 or 4 great saves. So showing he's very important for this team, and he's gonna continue with those performances, and hopefully some of them will be for the team to get points. The other notable for me was that Celio had his first minutes of the season. He was on the bench previous week, but wasn't considered for substitutions. But he did okay last night. Created a couple of chances and show he's a different. He has a different pace, and that's something the team could use. It's just a matter of finding his place in this new system.
I'm glad you mentioned the players because before the bad, we had comments in the chat, and I agree. Haziel Orozco has had another pretty good game. Timo Baumgartel is playing well as a central center back in a lot of these situations. You're seeing, I think, quality from, I mentioned the individuals in our midfield. So there are notable players in addition to Celio and Berkey that are stepping up and not having full match, like disappearing acts or consistent moments of frustrating 1v1s or positional issues. So Orozco, Baumgartel, I'll call it Edelman and Durkin, in addition to Celio, Toyshirt, and Berkey. It's an interesting cast of characters named. Not a lot. I mean, you're starting to get a shift in not the noteworthy names. Like we obviously didn't mention Leuven, who wasn't in this match. Hartl missed it. You don't mention a striker in this conversation. So it's just an interesting grouping of players who had decent games. I don't think you could ever say anybody had a great game losing 2-0 the way we did. Now we have to shift to the bad a little bit though, Santi. And there are a lot of things we could discuss here. While we discuss this for our live stream, I'm going to show the map, the average positioning map to digest because this is part of it. San Diego had a pretty balanced shape describing what this is. They had a 4-3-3 overall positioning, but as we knew they would, they leveraged their right side. And so one of the big issues on St. Louis is our left-hand side. Rafael Santos had a pretty rough game. I think Yohan Demay mentioned after the game that Rafa was kind of tired, and I don't know if it was a cardio conditioning type of a thing, but he just was not the same Rafael Santos effective player that we had against Charlotte. On the average positioning map, he's tucked inside of Dante Polvera, even inside of Miguel Perez as that left attacking mid. And this, if you're watching this only shows St. Louis up until basically the second San Diego goal. So this isn't taking into consideration our subs. This is basically what the map looks like for that first 52 minutes or so. Simon Betcher is tucked into the midfield. We have no connection really outwardly to Miguel Perez. The ball is almost exclusively being played through to Haziel Orozco and Conrad Ballum from Timo Baumgartel. It's just an abhorrent type match compared to the really good balance that we had against Charlotte last year. And it speaks to how well San Diego was able to dictate the entirety of this match. Going in between the lines, I look at what I call timidness from St. Louis, timidness to pass, not being as crisp on those first touches. And the press was a little different too in our off the ball movements. On our passing, we seem to, I would say, be a little too vanilla. Even in some of the buildups that we had, the first goal allowed, we'll show and talk about that in a minute. But it felt like there were almost predefined things that City wanted to do. Maybe they were seeing space that they would know they'd be able to do it, but they were almost lazily performed. Chris Durkin had a pass that led to a turnover that eventually led to that first goal. And it felt like it was almost a ding, ding, ding type of a pass where it went from Timo to Edelman to Durkin and then up to Miggy. Didn't make it to Miggy, but it was just so obvious. Telegraphed might be a good way to describe it, and how some of these passings were. Where you look at on the other side, San Diego, the second goal that they had, the Anders Dreyer assist, was just perfectly whatever the opposite of telegraphing is. It was perfectly hidden in what his desire was, passing versus shooting. Not unlike Simon Betcher's pass last week to Marcel Hartl, where it was very quickly handled. It took the defense by surprise. That's something San Diego did for both of their goals, were really creative passes in those final touches that took City off guard. I don't think we ever made that happen in our movements. And then the press, I was very uninspired by our press overall. We didn't attack the first ball carrier. What we did in this match seemed to be waiting for that first pass to occur and then make a move. It was that cohesive movement, but it was waiting for the first pass, allowing San Diego to kind of not be set with an individual ball carrier, but try and attack that first movement and make them uncomfortable when that second player received the ball, making them make a move extremely quick. The problem with that was San Diego was very good at making those connecting passes. They didn't need all the time in the world to draw the defense. They were just ready to make passes, ready to free themselves up off the ball. And their off the ball movement was inspiring to watch. And that's a reason that they were able to beat St. Louis so consistently with the press. And St. Louis's average height of defensive actions, to get around a couple of these screenshots here, was extremely low compared to what it was last week. And San Diego's was much higher than Charlotte's was last week. So San Diego was doing a better job of intercepting and causing challenges, clearance recoveries, all these defensive actions higher up on the field, around the middle of the field, compared to St. Louis's. Our first engagement on the ball, the height of our first defensive action, was in between the half line and our 18-yard box. And I don't think that's saying St. Louis wasn't high pressing, but it really speaks to the effectiveness of when we were able to first engage with San Diego. That's something St. Louis has to correct and work on, because our press is a core feature of this system. Yeah, we're gonna want to prioritize possession, and we know that we're wanting to make better on the ball choices and have more passes per possession. But when we lose the ball, no matter where we are on the field, our goal is to immediately recover it. And that's the basis for our press, is to immediately recover a lost ball or press in tandem with our entire team when they're playing it out of the back. This speaks to the ineffectiveness, a less than 40-meter average height of defensive action from our own goal line. That's something St. Louis has to correct. And lastly, I'll just call out our transition defense. Mentioned it earlier. Stepping up, not dropping back, their responsibilities and issues and coverage and spacing. Oh boy, was our left side frustrating because we categorically lost the battle that I highlighted as my matchup to watch. My 1v1 to watch in this match was Anders Dreyer versus Dante Polvera. That right side attacking midfielder against a right winger against our left center back, who is still learning the center back position. They exploited that to no end. I mean, credit to them for identifying the weakness in St. Louis on that left side and exploiting it regularly. It plays into why our average positioning is what it is. And it speaks to the effectiveness of what San Diego is able to do. And when you have a player like Anders Dreyer, who, as far as goal contributions, is rivaled in Major League Soccer lately only by Messi, you're going to be at a disadvantage when this situation occurs. And we were at a massive disadvantage.
Yeah, San Diego for sure was all over our left side, and Dreyer exploited the space he was given, and yeah, they identified very well St. Louis weaknesses. You mentioned the press, so two things about that. The St. Louis press was ineffective, as you mentioned, but I think San Diego did a good job. Like they were like touching the ball quickly, and they knew where to go to break that press. It wasn't a problem for them. And then when um, when St. Louis had the ball, I think St. Louis also struggled. You mentioned that passing wasn't very crisp, but I think part of it was the way San Diego was pressing when St. Louis had the ball. Like they were effective, like covering the spaces and getting St. Louis into positions where the passes won't be will not be as effective, and they could recover the ball. So San Diego read the game very well on both ends, and it could be a lesson for St. Louis going into the third game of the season against Seattle.
I think it has to be a lesson that they learn and apply and improve upon. The touches in this game, I mean, we weren't just out touched. Santi, 100 touches in a game is a lot. City rarely gets to that level. Edu Leuven is the only player who consistently gets to that point when he's in the game. In this match, San Diego had 4 players with over 100 touches in this game. And it wasn't even like it was their center back leading the charge either. This speaks to how effective their central midfield was and Jeppy Surkov in just orchestrating, pulling the strings all over the place. 144 total touches by Jeppy Surkov. That's an insane number. Christopher McVeigh, Anders Dreyer, Manu Dua all had over 100 touches. When your attacking right winger has 104 touches in a game, you're going to have a bad time if you're the other team. And that's what ended up happening to St. Louis. Santi, do you want to dive into some of the notable moments in the match, the goals, for instance?
Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention, talking about the bad things, something I didn't like last night either was the defending on the set pieces. Every time San Diego had a set piece, corner kick, it was trouble, and they were able to win a couple of headers, and also some balls that went from side to side, and Berkey couldn't get the ball to punch it, and a couple of chances from San Diego that were on set pieces. So I think the defending wasn't good last night.
Couldn't agree more. Let's take a look at what happened early. It only happened 3 minutes into the game. If you're on a live stream, we're going to take a look at it. If you are listening to it, strap in. This happened from what I would call a set play by St. Louis. There were things that happened, ball bounced around, but ultimately this play began with Timo Baumgartel getting the ball. Timo Baumgartel gets the ball in possession, plays it up to Daniel Edelman, and this was kind of the telegraphing vanilla pass from Chris Durkin where he sends it up. It was obvious what he was going to do. He's engaged quickly. We lose possession. The ball's bounced around. You see Edelman and Durkin pressing up high. And as the scramble occurs, both Edelman and Durkin are high up on the field. And I'm going to pause it here on our live stream because the issue is that we were caught in transition in a 5-on-4. So after Miggy was dispossessed, there was a mad scramble occurring. Everybody tried to recover the ball. This is the basis for the St. Louis press in a lot of ways that I mentioned earlier, that they go for immediate recovery, especially when you're in your attacking end. And it's still something that I want to see as a core piece of the identity. It can work, and it will work often enough, I think. The problem is the wherewithal and understanding of you have to have that mindset of what happens if things go wrong, right? There has to be that instinctive fallback that if you are not successful in what you're doing, you haven't gone so all out that you're committing to the absolute destruction of your defense. And in this case, that's what happened. The gamble lost. San Diego won out. And as soon as they got that ball free into their midfield and broke through into a transition, they had a 5-on-4. The 4 were our 3 center backs and Conrad Vallum. And so if you're looking at this, you can see Dante Polvera, our left center back, is stuck now between Anders Dreyer and probably the ball carrier. And as this plays out, you will end up seeing Timo Baumgartel and Haziel Roscoe occupy a fairly similar space. Dante Polvera more or less left out to dry with Anders Dreyer receiving the ultimate final pass, and he's just getting turned around in this transition. The passing at this point wasn't perfect in that final phase, in that final third when the goal was scored, but it was good enough that they had quality players able to retain possession, and ultimately Anders Dreyer had enough space to curl it in and score that goal. So as the ball is flicked over from Ingvardsson over to Dreyer, Dreyer just quickly has the space necessary to finish that goal. Santi, where do you see the biggest issue in this goal for St. Louis?
Is that a spacing that was created when St. Louis lost the ball? You can see on the video, you can see four players, including Edelman and Dorkin, trying to recover the ball, and then that leaves a lot of space between lines. And you can see right there, you can see that's six players from St. Louis behind the ball, and then you create that 5v4 situation. There's just a lot of space to cover if you are unsuccessful recovering the ball when you try to go with 4 or 5 players to recover.
The biggest reason I really harp on how this goal was allowed is that we're going to see this fairly often in St. Louis. It's the play starts with St. Louis possessing the ball, and it could be with better quality touches, could be a good string of passes together, but I still think we could do a better job of disguising our passes. That Durkin was a very clear cut. You could easily see that coming. The space that he had to pass forward, just stepping up into to disrupt the Miguel Perez receipt, not telegraphing it as much. But then when you turn the ball over, you're always going to see this. This is already to me a hallmark of the Yoann Damet system of turning the ball over in that area of the field. You have what he tries to get as a numerical advantage. It's obvious. So you have Edelman and Durkin immediately scrambling on the ball. You do have I think it's Durkin fell back just a little bit at times when San Diego seemed to retain the ball as if he knew there was a player behind him. But then there's an immediate that dribbling towards him, attacking the player, trying to recover. And because Edelman was over in that part of the field anyway, at the very beginning of that press, he was, dare I say, out of position to be able to defend that transition, because that's Edelman's part of the field right there on that right side in central mid with Durkin where he is. If you were in rest defense of sorts for St. Louis, that's where Edelman would be. It's the idea of the press that drew all these players into the area that they were. So when I talk about there needs to be an awareness of a fallback with responsibilities, this is what I'm talking about. And you have numbers by San Diego. So the mismatch, they've created that. So you can't have Timo Baumgartel step up into that space because you have attacking players that are right next to him. If you're watching, you see two attacking players right next to Timo, and you see Haziel outside of frame. But in this moment, there's nobody who can occupy this space for City because everybody else has responsibilities. Valem is outside on that wing, on that far right side for St. Louis. Dante Polvera has multiple people. The center backs you don't want to step that high up anyway. So because you've committed so hard to the press, you now have this as a scenario. So the responsibility at this point is up to Yoann Damet to determine one of two things. Either change the approach of your press to make sure that you're not overcommitting in this way, or figure out a tactical solution that if this occurs, if you get into this scenario where your press has failed, they've beaten your line, they have a numerical advantage, what are the responsibilities to mitigate this issue? And it's not an easy question. Unless you're going to change and tweak some things with your overall responsibilities for the press, this is not an easy answer to come to, but it's going to be paramount because this situation against a good possessing team, a good team that will take space when given them is going to happen. We're going to probably see it against LAFC here pretty soon. Seattle might even be a team that has that capability in moments of the game. So a lot that I'm taking away in this first goal. There's only 2 goals in the game, but this to me provides such a case study of what we are going to see going forward and an area for specific improvement that we need to see by St. Louis in their search to get better.
Yeah, it's a great example, and I'm sure this will be looked at this week. But yeah, we had even if you go back to last year, there were a lot of instances where the team was caught coming back numerical disadvantage. So it's not something new, but something the new coaching staff will need to look at. It was also very early in the game. Obviously, you want to be on the front foot and try to recover the ball in the opposition's part of the field. But I think too many guys committed to that play and ended up creating that disadvantage. And San Diego was clinical with the passing and also with the finishing by Dreyer.
And finishing by Anders Dreyer was just, I mean, that's going to be clinical every single time, any space that he gets. And that was part of the issue with the second goal that we'll talk about here in a minute. But I don't have the video that I really want to show on this one, the Simon Betcher miss. But how much should we take away from the 23-minute Simon Betcher miss? The Santos pass back to Durkin. Durkin plays Perez into near the goal line. And then Miggy, to his credit, I mean, that was a great pass. Good pace, good positioning, timing. Probably his best pass of the game, maybe even the best pass of the game from the St. Louis side. And Betcher can't convert point blank on goal. How much should we take away from this miss by Simon Betcher?
Well, it's one of those plays that can change the game. St. Louis was starting to get into the game, and if you score the equalizer at that point, could be a different game. And yeah, it's just 2 games into it, but people are starting to get impatient and say, "Oh, we need a number 9." I still think Betcher is gonna start scoring. Just it's a matter of time, but yeah, it's just unfortunate when you are under so much pressure. First to get a result, and second, in Betcher's case, to score, knowing that you are the guy, you have been called to be the number 9 and be the guy who should be scoring to miss such a clear chance. Yeah, obviously it's disappointing, and I don't know if mentally that hit the team. Obviously, there weren't any other San Diego goals on that first half, but I think that takes a toll, and you start thinking, oh, if we had a score in this chance, could be a different game. And then second half, San Diego score early, so it I think it has a lot of implications. Could have been a different game, and then maybe you go into the second half thinking about that too.
Second half started like the first half did, Santi, unfortunately. Really bad first few minutes overall. The second half, though, I mean, let's take it back for just a second. In the first half, you had basically an anemic end of half stat line for St. Louis, 0.12 XG to 0.31 San Diego. San Diego didn't light the world on fire. So St. Louis's defense was doing well enough, even though they were under significant pressure for most of the first half. Field tilt was dominated by San Diego. 139 passes in the opposition box to 63 from St. Louis, 13 to 4 touches in the opposition box. The numbers reflect the eye test. And then in the second half, Yohan DeMay makes an immediate sub. He subs in Thomas Totland for Rafael Santos, and he makes the move that he talked about last week, moving Conrad Vollum over to the left side. This move was I would say one of the more needed moves. Santos was just not being effective on that left side. He was not getting space. There was only one time with that Betcher move that I think he actually had significant space in the attacking half. And when you make this move, you move Conrad Vollum over, you get Totland with his fresh legs on the right-hand side, but it doesn't lead to a whole lot of massive changes immediately on quality, and St. Louis is able to retain possession. You did have Roman Berkey 49 minutes save on a free kick. So the set piece that you mentioned, there's a free kick situation at 49 minutes from deeper in the field, a header right on goal. Berkey had an amazing save. And then it's at the goal itself happens at 54 minutes. So did you see anything else that happened in that early part of the half that was really noteworthy before this goal? Or was it another case you feel, because I do, of San Diego coming out of a half or coming out of the gates and able to kind of just dictate the pace, do what they need to do to boss St. Louis around the field, and it ultimately ended up leading to a goal?
Yeah, it was San Diego again imposing their style and being the better team and scoring early, which basically at that point you have to start thinking about making our substitutions, changing a little bit on what you're doing, because it's early on the second half and you are down 2 goals. But yeah, I think it was more of the, it was very similar to the first half, San Diego being the better team. And you cannot, and you have mentioned this in previous podcasts, like the beginning of the half, of each half is an important, it's an important phase of the
Mhm.
game, and St. Louis lost in both halves.
I say there's three important phases of every game. It's the very beginning, it's right before half, and it's right after halftime. They might seem obvious, but it's important to remember as fans. I think why these are important. And in the beginning of the game, the beginning of half, they dictate what the next 45 are going to be. If you have a perfect strategy, if you have a great strategy, but you're immediately scored on to start the game like we were at 3 minutes, that entire strategy is out the window. Whole nother game plan is needed. And if a whole nother game plan is not needed, then you need to be okay and be comfortable with thinking about the game as if it's even, despite the
Hmm.
fact that it's not. If that makes sense. So the game plan that starts the game, obviously 0-0 score line. You can't play a different style when you're down 1-0 unless you're going to change tactics drastically, in which case, then everything else is out the window. The problem with a goal right before half is you have to sit with that. It causes things to change immediately that the coaching staff maybe didn't plan for, and they've got to think a little more dynamically. But also as players, you have to sit with that for 15 minutes and figure out. That's a different headspace that you're in. And then the same obviously happens in the second half as it did in the first. And unfortunately, 9 minutes in to the second half, we had a goal. For fans, it was a jarring situation. Santi, I'm not sure if you saw what happened on the Apple TV broadcast, but we were treated to an immediate loading screen in the second half. And then
Yes.
we came back to legitimately the goal being scored. So when you look at this on replay, in order to see what happened, you kind of have to go to the uh, the replays. And so the replay of this goal had San Diego start in midfield. They ended up turning the ball over from St. Louis. St. Louis had the ball that led up to this. But when San Diego had the ball in midfield, St. Louis had more or less a rest five high up on the field. This wasn't drop back, letting San Diego possess in the final third. This, to me, was another version of transition from the middle third. And I think this was by design for San Diego. They didn't want to be possessing the ball in the final third around and back and forth. Jaziel Orozco talked to his post game about the switches that San Diego was doing successfully. They didn't want to do that by and large in the final third. They wanted to do it in the middle third and create this space for them to then run against St. Louis. And it worked to a T. This play, though, that led to the second goal, Anders Dreyer didn't score it, but he definitely had an earned assist. He made this entire play happen, and he beats Dante Polvera in the middle of the field. And when he beats Dante Polvera, he takes Polvera completely out of the play. He's running with the ball, cutting from the right wing into the central areas through the right channel. Polvera tries to challenge him right at that middle third, final third break line. And when Polvera is not able to do that, he's taken out of the play. And so Anders Dreyer continues his run, able to continue recovering the ball. And at that point, he's got Timo Baumgartel to beat with Conrad Wallem at that point on the left side. If you're looking at this replay or you go watch the replay, you can see that Polvera is completely taken out of the play because of that missed challenge higher up on the field. And a player like Anders Dreyer's quality immediately continues his attack against Timo Baumgartel, disguises his pass extremely well. And you could already see where I've paused this on our live stream. You have Ingvartsen, who is cutting from in front of Conrad Wallem from that left defensive side from St. Louis. And with no left center back in that space, you're basically operating at this point like you have two center backs and two fullbacks. And it doesn't work well with how quick Anders Dreyer makes this happen. Timo steps up, which he kind of has to step up to battle Anders Dreyer. But there's then nobody left to guard Ingvartsen as he makes his run. And when Anders Dreyer successfully makes this little side flick pass, it's all over. And Ingvartsen finishes to Berkey's left.
That's what a talented player like Dreyer can do. He can draw defenders, put them out of position, and
Yeah.
it was also that no look pass was amazing too. And again, another great finish, but it was early on the second half, and It's just one of those plays that basically you are now behind. You have a 2 goal difference, and you need to think about making some changes in your strategy.
At that point, Yohan DeMay does begin to make some strategies, or some changes to his strategy, rather. It's only 4 minutes after the goal was scored that he makes his second subs. Brendan McSorley and Salio come in for Sangbin and Miguel Perez. This moves, McSorley takes the right 10, Salio takes the left 10, kind of 1-for-1 swaps on this one. Salio had some good chances. 64 minutes, had a nice shot from distance, dribbling into that left channel, creating space for himself right outside of the 18-yard box. Gets a nice shot off, and we've seen Salio score these before. So this is an example of him doing probably what he does best. He has a lot. There are some things that Yohan DeMay mentioned post game on. He's working with Salio on being a complete player, defensive side of the work. So there's some answers that we're hinting at on why he might not be starting yet. But we do see his ability to take over a game in these spaces as a sub. There's no reason that in this system, even if Salio has some responsibilities that DeMay is not a fan of or is working to improve, and he's not comfortable starting him in certain areas yet, that Salio can't come in a point like this in the game and make the difference. This ball goes in. I mean, that's almost a whole new ball game at that point where you're down by 1, and then these chances that Toyshirt had towards the end of the game and the entire game state from then on there begins to change a little bit, because a 1-goal deficit is much more attainable and much realistic than a 2-goal deficit with how that entire game had been developing so far. But ultimately, I'm not yet a fan of seeing Salio start, because I don't know where he would start over who at what point yet. Left wing back, I don't want to see him start. One of those attacking mid roles, it just depends. Marcel Hartle was unavailable in this game, and so I always have one spot taken in this type of a formation. Marcel Hartle is an attacking midfielder. It's that other spot that's open.
Yeah.
In this game, Santi, I'm starting to get on that train of I'm okay getting a different look from Sangbin. He's not showing us what we need to see. He only had another 23 total touches. Miguel Perez only had, I think, 19 total touches. Yeah. So our 2 attacking midfielders that left at the 58-minute mark, highly ineffective. Miggy Perez had that one moment at 23 minutes. Otherwise, they were borderline ghosts as far as being on the ball goes consistently.
Yeah, so that's also an indication of how well San Diego defended and didn't let St. Louis go into their half.
Very much so.
That on both sides, Sam Bing and Miguel Perez weren't like very few touches. That just shows St. Louis wasn't able to advance the ball enough.
Yeah, picture the amount of touches Marcel Hartle usually has, 60 plus, and you're dropping that position down to less than 20.
Yeah.
I mean, you're probably hard pressed to find a stat more clear than that shows what an issue was with this game and why St. Louis operated the way they did. After that Salio shot, you had San Diego make a sub. Anibal Godoy left, fresh legs in the midfield. And then at 65, you see Cedric Toyshirt come in for Simon Betcher. This is where Betcher comes out. McSorley moves to the 9. Toyshirt takes the right 10, and you have Salio at that left attacking 10. Cedric Toyshirt has a good end of the game. I think he operates well underneath and around Brendan McSorley. The Roman Berkey save at 74 has to be called out after the Amal Pellegrino shot from, he had the ball played over the top and that quick shot. Berkey had another amazing save. But going back to Cedric Toyshirt, the last real chance to me was at 83. And this was the individual move where Toyshirt dribbles past 3 defenders in that left channel, takes the ball centrally up and around, making kind of like a U towards goal, dribbling through players, and then just has that one final touch right before the keeper where it's a little hard and the ball gets a little too much space between Toyshirt, and Toyshirt's not able to wrangle it, but the ball keeps moving, and it's cleared at the last second by Kieran Sargent, the fullback for San Diego. So Toyshirt almost ends up with a goal just generated entirely by himself. And this is the flash of brilliance from Cedric Toyshirt that I think a lot of people is the reason that a lot of people are calling for Toyshirt to be now inserted into the starting 11, at least as an option instead of Sangbin, where you're seeing, like Salio did in this game, you're seeing a couple moments late in games. Now we're hearing about the fitness and getting him extended out. You see what he could do in this attacking mid-roll, what he's capable of underneath a 9, in and around a 9. And you wonder with Toyshirt and Hartle, whether it's Betcher or McSorley or Cordova up front, that to me is rather tantalizing to see what a Toy Shirt and Hartle attacking midfield could look like, having seen Toy Shirt in form this year do that kind of a thing at the end of this game.
Yeah, I was excited about seeing Deutscher moving so well and dribbling is something I didn't see last year. I think part of it was that he was hurt and he battled injuries, but I think the team is approaching his situation very well, just ramping up the minutes, and I think he looks very fit. And the fact he makes those dribbles is encouraging. As I said, I didn't see that much last year, so I think he's in better fitness this year, and hopefully once the team goes to at least 45 minutes, hopefully next game he will continue showing that and no impact on his fitness.
Ultimately, whether it's Cedric Toyshirt or anybody else, if you end the game with a 65-35 disadvantage and your core identity is not hitting on the counter or in transition or specifically taking advantage of a low possession type number and a low field tilt number, which the field tilt was also 65-35 as far as the amount of passes into and in the final third that San Diego had compared to St. Louis. If your identity isn't baked around a 35% possession, you're going to struggle when you have 35% possession. And that's what we saw. The low volume of touches, the inability to connect, the passing network being completely out of balance, off kilter, and not being able to progress the ball through your wings and into your attacking mids like you saw against Charlotte. This is a high quality San Diego team. Like I mentioned at the very beginning of this show, 11 goals, none allowed at home through 3 games in all competitions. This is a team that is primed and ready to repeat what they did last year in winning the West and making a run into the playoffs. Their fixture congestion is going to start to ramp up for San Diego, but we didn't have the benefit of any of that. So everything we previewed about this game came to fruition in probably the worst possible way, unfortunately. We bounce back going into Seattle or welcoming Seattle to St. Louis next week. There are players who had, I think, things to hang their hats on. We talked about him earlier. Roman Berkey with his 5 saves, Jaziel Orozco, Celio Pompeu, Cedric Toyshirt, Chris Durkin in different phases of play, but nobody put it all together in this game. And that's what St. Louis, in review of this, looking at the isolated moments that they allowed the goals and the things that we deep dove just a little bit ago, but also how they can be better take care of the ball and dictate and control possession against a team like San Diego that is effective on both sides of the ball. That's the goal for Yoann Damet. It's game 2, match week 2 of the Yoann Damet era. There is plenty of time and room for growth. You could still see how things can be set up in this kind of a system, but you also know that we fought this one with some missing pieces. And missing pieces highlights a lack of depth. Yes, I will acknowledge that. But missing pieces of, I'm not even counting Edu Leuven in this one, not for this purpose of this conversation, because I see so many comments this week and last about there's got to be a way we could do something with Leuven's roster spot. I'm not overly dissatisfied with Chris Durkin and Daniel Edelman in how they've been playing. I do think there would be a quality increase, but to me, this particular game highlights the importance of Marcel Hartle first and foremost. Probably also highlights the need for a different look at striker in addition to Betcher, but Marcel Hartle not being on the field as a designated player who is the most valuable player and is intending to be that based on the roster mechanism used to get him here. You miss a player like that. If San Diego was missing Anders Dreyer and they had a sub for 90 minutes, this would not have been the same San Diego team. Am I comparing Marcel Hartle to Anders Dreyer? Maybe. As far as the importance to their team, I think I am. And I'll stand behind that. If they missed Anders Dreyer for this game, they would not have looked the way that they did. They might not have been as vulnerable as St. Louis was without Hartle, but and without the ability for Toyshirt to go the full time. That's a factor in Miggy getting the start as well. And there are changes that St. Louis needs to make and evaluations in other areas that have been lacking in these first 2 games. Sangbin, seeing what Rafael Santos offers in a third game, because 2 games is still a small sample size when you've had a good game and a bad game. It's a little more worrisome for a player like Sangbin, I think, who's had 2 rough games. But going forward, starting to get more data, more analysis in what needs improving, what positions need bolstering, And then getting Marcel Hartle back ultimately, Santi, is might be the biggest takeaway of how things will look different next week.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully he'll be available and train the whole week. But yeah, you could see how different the team look without him. After learning he wasn't gonna be available, I was thinking, oh, I wonder how this team is gonna look without him. Is he one of those players that if you don't have him is gonna make a whole difference, or is this one of those things that the way the team is designed and the way the system works, maybe he won't be missed as much. But it was proven that the team misses him a
Yeah.
lot. He's a very important player for the team. So hopefully he'll be back next week. And again, very small sample size, 2 games. I think people were encouraged after the draw against Charlotte based on what the team showed. But then you go to San Diego against a team that is in form and was one of the best teams in the league last year. It's a test to see where you are, and you can tell this team is a work in progress, as it's gonna take a while to get there.
One thing that I'll because I saw a couple comments. One thing before we wrap up, some of the underlying stats that you see throughout the game, like XG, are different in different websites. FotMob has a different XG than Apple, has a different XG than SofaScore.
Hmm.
I think by and large we had anywhere from the same XG 1.16 that I saw on Opta, I think, to FotMob's 0.41 to 0.86. Ultimately, we didn't have as many good shot opportunities, volume wise or quality, as San Diego outside of that Betcher chance. Toy shirts at the end, I think, was another one that padded that a little bit. But I just wanted to add that caveat before we go on some of these stats. Santi, after this, we come back home. St. Louis, as of Monday, we're still in San Diego. We found out, confirmed by Yohan DeMay, that the travel plans for the team when they go, especially these West Coast games, are stay that next night, prioritize rest and recovery, come back the next day, and then start training whenever they can, probably Tuesday of this week. That's what St. Louis will look like coming into the week. Next week, we welcome Seattle, who themselves just lost 2-1 to RSL. I think Seattle has this crazy streak, 16 games or something like that, having lost in Sandy, Utah, when they go play RSL, or games they have not won. It's kind of wild, this stat. But
Wow.
Seattle's coming into St. Louis next week, 1-1-0, 3 goals for, 2 goals against, looking fairly beatable. They've got their own injury issues. We're going to preview that in full on Thursday for Flyover. Any last words on this game, Santi?
No, I think we covered it all. It's one of those games, not a lot to talk about, and hopefully things will be better on the next podcast when we talk about that Seattle post game.
Always the hope. Any other games around the league that caught your attention, Santi? I'll give a couple for me and then let you go. The Inter Miami game before ours was insane. Orlando up 2-0, and then Miami scoring 4 in the second half. Typical Miami, in never count them out, and they're always dangerous until the dying minutes. I saw Lionel Messi in a highlight mouthing over to the Orlando bench, seeing if their assistant coaches wanted his autograph, which is just savage. I mean,
Cheeky, yeah.
that is the kind of gamesmanship that you expect from the greatest player in the world, knowing what his role for this team is. Galaxy beat Charlotte 3-0. That's both a condemnation for the quality of Charlotte this year, something to keep in mind for St. Louis as we continue putting the breadcrumbs together of what this team is in 26. Charlotte lost 3-0 to the Galaxy. Klaus had his brace in the first 13 minutes of the game. Philadelphia, while they lost to NYCFC 2-1, Indiana Vasilev became their PK taker.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of wild to see. And then you just have a bunch of results. Seattle lost 2-1. San Jose won 2-0. LAFC 2-0 against Houston. Any other game? SKC drew Columbus. That was notable in the sense that how well they performed against Columbus, which was in review of this week, extra frustrating to see. Any other games catch your eye?
Yeah, for me, New York Red Bulls won. They won their 2 games this year, and
Playing
again,
kids.
with kids, playing the kids. Julian Hall scored again, and they started the season with 2 wins and giving the youngsters a chance. Again, is something that I always value. I mentioned the three guys in defense for San Diego being under 23. And you mentioned LAFC, obviously also 2 out of 2, but they have not conceded any goals yet. And St. Louis is going to see them 2 weeks from now.
This Western Conference is looking kind of scary to start the year,
Yeah.
Santi.
Yeah.
St. Louis and Kansas City are the only two teams in the West through 2 weeks without a win.
Oh my God.
It's not like a murderer's row type of thing yet, but St. Louis has to work to make sure there's not a gap that starts to widen here, because you already see a 2-point gap that exists towards that bottom in the 13th spot. And it starts to get a little scary knowing Seattle and LAFC are right around the corner. Seattle's tied for 9th. LAFC is obviously tied for 1st with San Diego. But, there's a lot of reflection St. Louis will be doing this week. Look forward to seeing what Yohan DeMay is cooking up later. So stick with Flyover, as we'll have coverage of training. We'll have coverage of the press conference and analysis on what Yohan DeMay is looking to do to right the ship now, to pick up the first win heading into or at Energizer Park next week against Seattle. That's it for us on Flyover Footy. For Santiago Beltran, my name is Matt Baker. Thank you for joining us for this fallout look at a 2-0 loss by St. Louis to San Diego. We'll catch you later. For now, have a great rest of the week and go City.
Vamos City.
All right, y'all. Thanks for tuning in for this live stream, or if you're watching on YouTube, thank you for tuning into the video. Appreciate you spending your time with us to start this week. It was a rough one, so you guys are the true heroes for tuning in for City content despite this, and hopefully we have better news for you later on this week.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, y'all.